We've got a really cool amp in today. Welcome to the Itsy Guitar YouTube channel. This is a Park, but it's a Mitch Colby Park, which if you know, you know. And I've never seen inside one of these before, so I'm really excited to check it out. I think this is just honestly one of the most beautiful amplifiers. I just love the aesthetic of it. The black with the white knobs and the white trim. And this amplifier is in because it is red plating some power tubes. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. I have played this amp before actually, and it is absurdly good. So this is a super bass spec, which is I don't have really any experience with a super bass actually. My super lead you guys have seen started life as a super bass, but of course it was modified to a super lead and I didn't convert it back. So just get a closer look here. The exterior, just such a cool amplifier. So let's go ahead and take a look at the back. Here we have the back side with the back panel off. Now, if there's a competition for the most lopsided amp to carry, this has got to be in the top 5. This thing is so heavy on this side. All of the weight is over here, so it definitely just wants to kick back whenever you're holding it. Beautiful, beautiful amp though, again. And really, you can see pretty clearly why this amp is in. Take a look at the tubes here. So at least 3 of the 4 are pretty roasted. This last one is not as bad as the other ones, but still hot. So the owner actually sent me a photo of all 4 red plating it appeared. So we'll have to just check the bias, and we do have a new quad of tubes here. You can see 205. Again, I don't know tons about this amplifier, so I don't want to speak any more than I have to. I feign ignorance. I do know it's a very special amp. Serial 205, so I guess there's only 5 of these out there. You can see is a 2020 amp. Super excited to check it out. So let's go ahead and take the chassis out carefully and see what we got. All right, here it is on the workbench. First thing that jumps out to me, Marin on the transformers. So these are Marin Audio. Chris Marin is actually local to me, friend of the channel, really great guy. Been super helpful, very knowledgeable, and yeah, really well known actually for his transformers. It's cool to see a pair on this amplifier. The choke right here, I don't know who made that. Just a little USA stamp there. We already looked at this, so let's go ahead and pull the tubes out. Get a closer look at these. JJ's. You can see, definitely roasted. Now, we did play the amp, and it sounded amazing. But we couldn't see if they were red tubing, or rather red plating at the time. And the owner later was playing it at home and thought it wasn't maybe sounding its best, and sent me a photo of it red plating. I said, yep, bring it over. Let's go fix it. So he's got a new set of JJEL34-2s coming in. And then the preamp tubes, I believe, are some pretty nice stuff. Let's see what we got. It's got a Mullard right here, 12X7. Not sure what that is, but looks like something nice. Not real great at being able to pick out what tubes are. And then a Hammond branded, but that wouldn't be a Hammond. Maybe an Amprex. Made in Holland, 12X7 V1. So really nice set of tubes here. So now, I guess it's time to flip it over. So let me get myself situated and let's see what we got. Wow, look at this thing. This is built incredibly well. Obviously, you know, very much in the spirit of the vintage amplifier. It's got vintage mustards in it, vintage pyre resistors in it, and man, just looks incredible. Really well done. Obviously, a lot of care went into this thing, and you can tell. Looks like it's even got like older diodes, maybe new old stock diodes that you see on the older amps. Beautiful work in this thing. Even the transformer, all of this, just very clean. Very clean. Yeah, Mitch Colby, his reputation is very high, and I am not disappointed one bit. Well done, Mitch. This looks awesome. So as far as the problem we're having with this amplifier, you can say problem in quotation marks, could just be a bad set of tubes. But the bias is right in this area. So you got your bias caps right here, and this is your trim pot for the bias. So basically what we can do is just check to make sure we are getting negative bias, check the schematic, see what we should be getting, and just kind of tune it in from there. We got a new set of JJs, like I said. We'll make sure it's all healthy and everything's okay. We'll do a burn-in test with the aux box, make sure everything is fine and there's no problems hidden that take a while to come into play once the amp warms up. So we'll try and eliminate any possibility for that, and then she'll be back to the owner. So let's get it prepped for testing. The first step here is literally just to confirm that we have negative bias. So really quick, this amp is wired a little bit differently than you might expect an original to because it has a master volume installed. So if you don't know, it's a Larmar style. Basically, there's normally 2 resistors here in a V shape. The bias feed comes in here, so the negative bias voltage is here, goes through those 2 resistors, those bias leak resistors, and then there's a wire connected to this eyelet or turret. And this one, and those go to the pin 5 grids of the output tubes, and then those are joined to the other set. So pretty simple. And instead of those resistors, we just have a dual gain pot. So each side of the pot is acting as one of the 2 resistors. And again, just a really solid master volume. I've done it in many amps. It sounds fantastic, and I can confirm it sounds great in this amp as well. So really what we're looking for is just confirming at this spot and this spot, we have negative bias, they're matched. And as we adjust the pot, the bias is changing. That'll be first step. So let's go ahead and switch this over to DC volts. With 50 volts from the wall, let's go ahead and just see what we're getting. So should we see a negative number, negative 14.4, negative 14.4. Okay, that's perfect. So we want to see. We'll be seeing the same thing over here, and we are. So everything is looking good there. Now I want to go ahead and just make sure the trim pot is working, and we'll take our screwdriver, just confirming that the bias adjustment pot is working, and it is. So that direction is the coldest bias it'll do, and this will be the hottest. So the more negative voltage is a little confusing, but the more negative voltage, the colder the bias. So we can kind of just start at the coldest and work our way up just to be extra safe, but everything's looking good. So we can go ahead and grab our bias probe and our tubes, confirm what it's doing at modern wall voltages, dial it in, and we should be good to go. All right, we are all ready to go to check the bias in the amplifier. We've got a brand new quad of JJ EL34-2s in it. We've got it connected to the Variac for 121 volts from the wall. I like to do 121 where I live. 120 is pretty consistent. Just gives a little bit more, so you tend to bias it a little bit cooler. And we've got the bias probe in this tube socket. I'll check all of them to confirm, but for the video's sake, we'll do just that one. And then multimeter connected to the grid there so we can check what the negative bias is. And then, of course, we've got the Rob Robinette tube calculator, tube bias calculator here. It's an app that you can download, and we've got EL34 plugged in. We'll have to fill out this number, and then we can check the bias. So let's go ahead and turn it on. First thing we'll do is just let it warm up on standby. So it doesn't seem like we have a ton of range, to be honest. Negative 44 at 121 volts from the wall does not seem all that cool, to be honest. I don't know offhand what these call for. We're going to go ahead and just check it by the numbers, and then we'll also check the bias with the scope when we're done with that. So now it's warmed up for a little bit. We'll go ahead and flick it off standby. And wow, this amp runs hot. Holy cow. 527.49, negative 44. That's crazy hot. 49, we're at 103%. And this is an amp that should be at 70% max. And we're at the coldest bias setting. So let's go ahead and turn this off. Wow, okay. That's a bit perplexing to me, to be honest. I'm not really sure why the range would be like that. It does look, now that I'm looking at it a bit closer, it does look like there's a resistor added here, potentially to change the bias value. I gotta check the schematic here. Looks like they added something else here. So looking at a JMP Super Bass schematic, which I think is supposed to be the same as this amplifier, I'll double check that later, but just for this quick video test, we can see it is actually a 27K trim pot, so that's dead on what's supposed to be. I guess I'm just not used to seeing that value. And then we've got a 47K resistor connected to that. We can see that's this resistor right here. This is not a 47K, it's a 56K, but close enough where this might be dead on for the Park version, I guess. I don't know a ton about them, to be honest. And then we can see the 2 bias caps there. here and here. Got a 15K between them. You can see that right there. That's correct. We got the diode right there. And then this is the questionable area right here. So let's measure what these resistors actually come out as. But according to this, it should be a 27K or I guess a 22K. Looks like a gray from my, it's hard to see from my angle, gray, red, yellow. So that would be a 820K, I guess. That doesn't seem right. 250. All right, what am I missing here? 220K is a massive change, so it might be something to do with the transformer and the voltage it's outputting, I guess. But yeah, really interesting. I don't really know what to make of that, to be honest. So let me do a little bit more research, and we'll come back in a sec. So sanity check for myself real quick. 2 parallel resistors. You can use a calculator to confirm what those should be. The value should be, so 220K and 820K, which is what those two are according to the stripes on them. And those two in parallel should give us 173K. But we're way past that. So perhaps one of the resistors or both the resistors are way out of tolerance and measure very differently. All right, huge shout out to Chris Marin and Mitch Colby for responding to me late at night and answering my questions about this amplifier because I was a bit confused. What's going on here? Something wasn't quite adding up to me. So first and foremost, zoom in a little bit. Mitch did confirm this is not his work, which is obvious looking at everything else. So somebody added in this resistor. They were trying to adjust the bias and they didn't really do it correctly. So this is part of the problem here. But another part of the problem is over with the transformer. So spoke to Chris Marin, and he told me, because we're looking at a 1992 model super bass as our basis for judging this with the schematic, and that calls for 22K or 27K here. Well, the stock value that Mitch put in was a 220K, which is correct because the transformer is winded as an earlier, I think 66 is what he said, spec. And so that means it does not have a dedicated bias supply winding, which will be a lower voltage, which is why they don't need such a big resistor here. So this has higher voltages to the bias supply, meaning you need a larger resistor to bring that down. So this white wire right here, if you guys can see that, is feeding the bias supply. And you'll notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, really 6 if you ignore the center tap, windings on the secondaries here, or taps rather. And so we got the white one on this inner pair, and then you got the reds on the very outermost pair. So Chris informed me that the outer pair is 550 volt B+, the next pair over was 500 volt, and then the inner I think was 460, something like that. So we've got the bias winding on 460 range, and then we got the B+ at the 550 range. So we saw really high plate voltages there, and the bias winding is, or rather the bias supply is too low voltage to offset it basically. So there's a few different solutions we can have here. First and foremost, we're definitely removing this carbon comp and just leaving the Pyre 220K, and we'll kind of have that as our baseline, if you will. And then options are to either move the white wire over to where the red wires are, and this would raise the voltage supply going here for the bias, which would match the higher B+ and help us bias it better. That would give us a very high B+ like we have now, over 500 volts. That's really cooking. That's, in my opinion, way too much for EL34s. So, but it's ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, the owner's decision because it will change the tone having B+ that is that high. And if you drop it a ton, you're definitely going to hear a big difference in the sound. So we have that. And then the next pair that's inside was 500 volts. So we could move the reds to there and leave the white wire, or move the white wire to where the reds would then be and just kind of fine tune it that way. Or we could go even more extreme and go to the inner pair here and leave the white wire as it is. So several different options there. And once we do that, we're still going to have to tweak this resistor here to dial it in and really get it settled. But yeah, what I thought was going to be a super quick, easy video is turning out to be a bit more complicated. Nothing crazy, but yeah, hey, it's more fun for you guys, right? So we're going to go ahead and end here tonight because I got to speak to the owner tomorrow, confirm what he wants to do, just let him know kind of what the situation is, and we'll go from there. All right. So I spoke to the owner, explained the situation, and he approved us to move forward. We're going to go ahead and drop the B plus voltage one step down to the 500 volt pins here. And then we will see if we need to move the white lead or if we can keep it the same, TBD. And then we're also going to go ahead and remove this extra carbon comp resistor that is piggybacked off the Pyre. We'll start with the 220K as the base point. And then from there, we'll just swap the resistor versus doing this kind of this setup here to keep it nice and clean. So with that, the first step, we're just going to go ahead and make sure there's no voltage in the amplifier. Very, very simple, but very, very important. And so we're just going to go ahead and bleed off any voltage we got going on here. So we're going to be looking at pin 3. And then we'll confirm with the multimeter there's nothing left. See, there's no more voltage. So the amp is safe. Obviously, it's unplugged as well from the wall. So good to go there. Now let's go ahead. We'll first just remove this resistor, and then we'll shift things over to the power transformer side of the amp. If you hear some wind noise in the background, it is extremely cold in my garage this time of year. So, well, I say extremely cold. You guys live in much colder environments than me, but for me, it's quite cold in here. So I've got a little heater running. Wow. Well, this is insane. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. Let me zoom in a little bit. This resistor is literally wrapped in a knot around the lead of the Pyre resistor here. And when I say a knot, I mean like literally a knot around itself at least twice. Holy cow. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that off, to be honest. We might have to just pull both of them out and then put in a temporary 220K in its place. That might have to be the move here. All right, just got a large carbon comp 220K there that I had as a old vintage pole, so not really being used for anything. Perfect for this, obviously just temporary, but that will work. Now let's go ahead and shift our focus over here. Shifting gears, let's go ahead and take off the heat shrink coverings. These two can stay for now. We'll be moving this one here and this one here. Based off the old solder, it looks like this one was here before, actually. All right, that looks okay. So we can go ahead and fire it up again, check the B+, check the bias, and see where we're at. So we've got the bias probe hooked up. We've got the multimeter connected to the grids to check for the negative bias. And then we've got the calculator here to be able to figure out what we're running at. We got the variac turned on to 121. And we've got obviously a load on the amplifier. So let's go ahead and turn it on, warm it up, and switch it over. All right, let's see what we get. And look at that. So we moved over from the 550 to the 500 B plus tap. You can see we're at 500 plate voltage just about, and the plate current is much, much lower. So put in those numbers, we're at 50% plate dissipation at the coldest setting on the amp. We can see the bias is basically the same as it was before, negative 47. So that's perfect. So now what we can do here is turn this to get us a slightly warmer setting. So according to the calculator, we want to shoot for around 35 milliamps maximum. So let's go ahead and see what we get. So this will warm it up. You'll see that number go up. You'll see the other number go down. They have an inverse relationship. So halfway on the trim pot. We're too hot. So let's go 34. Let's see what that gives us. So we're now at 66%. So we go even a little bit hotter than that. Brilliant, right on the money. So now should be good to go to do a bit more, burn-in test and all that sort of thing. But this resistor right here, obviously we'll replace that, try and get that Pyre back in place, undo all of the wraps here, see if we can reuse this, and should be good to go, but looking good. Next up, we're going to go ahead and check the bias with the oscilloscope. Now, this is just kind of a way for us to confirm the numbers we just did. So we saw, according to the textbook, so to speak, of what the bias number should be. We have it set to that. Everything seems good, but the oscilloscope will kind of confirm if the amp is actually operating healthy in the real world at those settings. So pretty straightforward. I'm going to show you guys that from my phone since the oscilloscope is way over off camera. And I'll go through that. And we're also going to measure the output on the amp just to make sure that it is healthy and putting out roughly 100 watts or so clean. So let's switch to Handycam and go through it. So we got the multimeter here. This is going to tell us in AC volts what the output wattage is. I'll explain that in a second. And then this is the oscilloscope probe connected to the speaker out, and that is running over here. So we got the oscilloscope. We've got the aux box. We are 8 ohm set up right now for the amp. And then we've got the signal generator here, which is set to 1 kilohertz signal. And so that's sending into the front end of the amp right here. And we'll be able to see a waveform. So let's go ahead. I'll turn the knob, and you guys will be able to see on the oscilloscope a waveform start to appear. So I'm going to keep turning this up until we see it start to clip. So there we can see it clipping. So we'll go just kind of below that. So somewhere in that range, I would say. Now, as far as bias is concerned, what we're looking at is here and here on the waveform and seeing if there's any little dips. I see no dips, so it looks like the bias is set properly the way we have it, so that's good news. Now we can go ahead and transition over to the multimeter. We see the AC volts here. So to do the math on this, you basically take the AC volts you're getting with the signal and you times it by itself or square it, so 28 times 28. And then you divide that by the impedance here, so 8 in this case. And 28 times 28 divided by 8 should be right about 100 watts. So I will fact check that real quick off camera, but I'm pretty confident that's right. So it seems like everything is running nice and healthy, which is great. And to confirm for the overhead camera, we have 28 times 28 divided by 8 gives us 98 watts clean. So basically right on the money of what we would expect. So very happy with that. This thing seems nice and healthy, and I think we're good to go. So we'll do just a kind of a burn-in, typical play it, make sure it's all sounding good in reality, but all the numbers test good. The oscilloscope shows good. So I'm pretty confident this amp is good to go. Now we do have to replace this resistor still, but that's obviously no big deal. I can do that off camera. So we're gonna go ahead and end here tonight, and I might pick it up with some playing samples later, TBD. I wanted to show this real quick. The resistor I was saying is like wrapped around itself in a knot. That's crazy. So we'll go ahead and try and remove this. So I freed the Pyre from the parallel carbon comp resistor. This is a 220K red, and yellow, and it's a 5%er, but it measures, look at this, 410 or so K. So it measures almost double what it should. I've never seen a resistor ever drift that high, and this is a 5% resistor. That is crazy. So I guess that explains why somebody added a parallel resistor there. This is way too much for this space. So unfortunately, I think we're just going to have to move forward with a carbon comp there. I actually think that carbon comp is totally fine if I just trim it. So I think we'll just stick with that. Gives a little bit of extra beef in that area as well. So, all right, just figured I'd record that and show you guys. Well, hot damn, does this thing sound good? This thing is a tone machine. So impressed. I've heard it before in in the room next to it, and that was before with the way wacky bias. So kind of interesting to hear it now, but man, it sounds killer. It's very interesting to hear a super bass circuit. You know, my super bass, if you guys have followed along with my journey with my JMP, started life as a super bass, but was converted to super lead, and I maintained that kind of half conversion in the amplifier. So I've never actually played a super bass before, and yeah, just a really, really great sounding circuit. Definitely a lot more clean, way more clean headroom, a lot less gain, even turned up quite a bit. Definitely less gain than my super lead has, and a lot less finicky. So the bright cap you can see here, it looks like it says 100 G on it, so I'm guessing it's 100 picofarad, and that's a very small bright cap, obviously. So it's it's not very bright, as in it's like overwhelming. The bright cap is not harsh or anything, so it's just kind of a nice, warm, more classic sound that I'm used to versus kind of the more Kerrang style Marshall tones that my JMP gives. This is really great. I'm sure this is much better with pedals and just more versatile and all. But sounds awesome. I can't wait to hear it through an actual cab. But there you go. There's just a little hint of how it sounds through the aux box. With that, I think we can go ahead and close the book on this amp. It sounds great, biased great, everything checks out. So I think we get this back to the owner ASAP. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and until next time, see ya.